Hello, how are you today? Do you want to dive into a book that might just surprise you? Whether it becomes your next favorite or one you might skip? Let's find out what readers are saying about it.
Shannon, who has 2 likes, says, "This is definitely a book of short stories. It read like the history parts of Alton's previous shows. I found many of the stories boring, slow, and I wasn't sure why it was part of this book. There were a few times I laughed. I appreciated his story on why he no longer eats octopus. 2. If you are an Alton fan, I am sure you will enjoy this book. Thanks to NetGalley and the publisher for the arc." Allison, who has 2 likes, says, "Audiobook. I was a fan of Good Eats. And you get a lot of that same personality through this collection of essays. A lot of the essays were quite short, which was nice for fitting in a chapter or 2 here and there. Buy some chopsticks and see what happens." Rachel Rosenblum, who has 2 likes, says, "A cute read for fans of Alton Brown to learn more about him. Comprised of a series of disconnected short stories from various times in his life. Mostly told with a comedic lens. Gave me the same energy as reading Nick Offerman's books. Not sure this had to exist. It's enjoyable and endearing, but there's not much of a takeaway except to know a little more about a TV personality I've watched for many years. And some cooking and food science tidbits. I wish there was a little more of a linear or memoir aspect because the out-of-sync storytelling had me wishing for a little more concrete detail." Becky, who has 2 likes, says, "Good Eats was a staple in my house. It's kid-friendly, entertaining, and educational. Alton Brown is a few years older than me, and I could relate to so many of his pop culture references. I loved listening to this one, and I am putting it at my 1 with Brooke Shields' memoir for this year so far. I laughed a lot, cried several times, and just thoroughly enjoyed it." January, who has 2 likes, says, "Food for Thought. Essays and Ruminations by Alton Brown. 2025. X plus 292-page Kindle ebook story pages x283 genre. Nonfiction. Memoir. Essays. Cooking. Biography. Food featuring celebrity chefs. 1960s childhood. College. Cooking to the Heart. Georgia. Working. Tuscany. Italy. France. Cultural cuisine. DNA testing. Grandma's biscuits. Reminiscing. Rants. Raves. Memory screenplays. Julia Child. Television. Good Eats. Husky. Dieting. Food and movies. Iron Chef America. Martha Stewart. Martinis. Travel. Recipes. Teaching. Acknowledgements. More in personal memoirs. Advertisement of covers. Authors links rating as a movie. R for adult content and language songs for the soundtrack. We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together by Taylor Swift. The Boys Are Back in Town by Thin Lizzy. Turning Japanese by The Vapors. Addicted to Love by Robert Palmer. I Didn't Mean to Turn You On by Robert Palmer. Books and authors mentioned. Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss. The Mangler by Stephen King. The Thin Man by Dashiell Hammett. Everybody Comes to Rick's by Murray Burnett and Joan Allison. Casablanca. The Godfather by Mario Puzo and Francis Ford Coppola. Based on The Godfather by Mario Puzo. Goodfellas by Nicholas Pileggi and Martin Scorsese. Based on Wise Guy by Nicholas Pileggi. The Ipcress File by Len Deighton. Spencer series by Robert B. Parker. The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. The Wicker Man by Anthony Shaffer. Based on Ritual by David Pinner. The Odyssey by Homer. Cookwise by Shirley Corriher. Dracula by Bram Stoker. Apocalypse Now by John Milius and Francis Coppola. Inspired by Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad and Dispatches by Michael Hare. Macbeth by William Shakespeare. The Stones of Venice by John Ruskin. Entertaining by Martha Stewart. Martha's Entertaining. A Year of Celebrations by Martha Stewart. Casino Royale by Ian Fleming. Charlie Trotter. Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Beowulf. Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. Memorable quotes. I have, when appropriate, changed names to shield the innocent and protect myself from lawyers. I may have folded time a bit here and there, misremembered a fact or two, and Lord knows I am no stranger to exaggeration. But all in all, it all happened, and honestly, whatever didn't, should have. Little did I know what I was drawn to was the aroma of orthocresol, aka CH3C6H4, a phenol also found in peat, the acidic remains of decomposed vegetation commonly found in bogs, and burned in the malting process, especially of Islay whiskies like Lagavulin or Laphroaig, which I was clearly enjoying before heading off to kindergarten, where the teachers often noted that I was slow. Ah, the price of pleasure. I also developed an early affinity for Gainsberger's dog food, produced by General Foods from 1961 until sometime in the 1990s. Each individually cellophane-wrapped Gainsburger was manufactured to resemble a raw hamburger patty, and I adored them, often trading whatever human food I had to the dog in exchange for its meaty goodness. I swear I can still taste those wonderful pucks and would hit one right now if it were in front of me. The point is, when it came to culinary matters, I was by no means normal. Their name here, there are only two kinds of food: good food and bad food. Yes, chef. And you know what? What, chef? In 12 hours. They're both shit. No one has ever asked me to explain myself. And that's a good thing because I can't. But I know, with absolute certainty, that it's true. Truth is, fish and chips became English. Not through colonization, but immigration. Namely Jews fleeing the Inquisition when Spain took over Portugal in 1580. It should be noted that although Jews had been in England since medieval times, they were expelled by King Edward I in 1290. And were not allowed to return until 1656. Under the government of Oliver Cromwell, many fled to England, bringing their culinary traditions with them. One of these involved breading pieces of haddock and frying them on Friday afternoons so they could be eaten later in the evening on the Sabbath, when cooking was forbidden. The crust, like those of early English pies, was merely a vessel for cooking and preservation, not something meant for consumption. Eventually, Jewish fish fryers took to selling their wares on the streets. The crust was improved, and the rest is history. Following a trip to England, Thomas Jefferson wrote about eating fish cooked in the Jewish fashion, and the famed chef Alexis Soyer included a recipe for fried fish Jewish fashion in his 1855 collection, A Shilling Cookery for the People. So, for all their crimes, the English are not exactly xenophobic when it comes to the table. I am not sure whether the French, with their rigid system of techniques and traditions, could claim that. Food for thought. My maternal grandmother, Ma May, whom I adored, grew up humble in the mountains of North Georgia. She was a worker bee, and as a young woman, toiled in a fabric mill, raised 2 girls, gardened and canned her way through World War II, and fed her husband every day. Eventually she and my grandfather graduated to the merchant class. He owned a gas station and repair shop, and she ended up owning the most elegant women's fashion store in the region. This is all to say that she was a busy lady, and so her cooking style was what she called plain ol' home cookin', which meant not fussing with, fixating on, or overthinking culinary matters, even when producing a glazed orange pound cake for a church luncheon, fried chicken for a family dinner, or anything else for that matter. Cooking was just a thing that needed doing. And back then it was a woman's job to do because, according to my grandmother, when men attempt anything other than grilling steaks, they make a mess of things. One thing I remember from my time spent with her as a kid is that no matter what was going on in life, Ma May got up early every day and cooked breakfast for her husband and anyone lucky enough to be visiting, including eggs, bacon or sausage, grits, and fresh biscuits, which is to say, buttermilk biscuits, light, fluffy, about 2 inches across, well browned, tangy, although I'd witnessed folks dressing them with honey or jam, or building sausage sandwiches with them, sometimes with a kiss of mustard. I never craved anything but a pat of butter. Little Debbie Nutty Bars, crisp wafers, stacked with layers of a peanut butteresque cream enrobed, manufacturer's word, in a waxy chocolate-ish coating. They come plastic wrapped, 2 by 2, suggesting that 2 bars comprise a serving. Whatever. They are terrible and I adore them. Yes, I know damn well that McKee Foods of Collegedale, Tennessee, changed the name to Nutty Buddy sometime in 2016. But that's totally bogus because Nutty Buddy is an ice cream product. Pre-filled cone topped with chocolate and nuts and wrapped in paper that we used to buy in the lunchroom in high school, and I refuse to cross my monikers. My last note on the matter. I don't care who you are or what you do. If you pronounce mascarpone marscapone or turmeric, I will never refer to you as chef unless it's part of yes. Chef. Pronounced in that very special way that doesn't mean yes. Chef at all. At least 3 times a week I must eat oily fish, especially canned sardines, yogurt, broccoli, sweet potatoes, avocados. Once and only once a week I get to consume red meat, white starch, white rice, pasta, potatoes, dessert, alcohol. The foods I never, ever eat. Fast food, sodas, excluding sparkling water, processed meals, anything with the word diet on it. So, what's the difference between these images and what would classically be known as dirty pictures? Regardless of whether or not you follow Stan's dad under the blanket, something that is meant to be done in a group, or at least with one other person, isn't. Granted, a lot of Americans started eating alone with the advent of the drive-through window. But at least we were actually eating. Now we're eating with our eyes. And our eyes only. And thus, food's most potent superpower, its ability to connect one human to another, is fading. Plenty of people may still be sitting across from other people at restaurants and dinner tables. But as food morphs into yet another form of media, I fear that many of them are just hunting and gathering for their next post for anyone living out west or up east. Buc-ee's is a chain of freeway-adjacent superstores famous for their massive jerky walls. It's really something to see, the foods that are made to satisfy our cravings. Like those cheese apps, are cheaper to make and thus cheaper to purchase than whole foods that deliver what it is our bodies need. Just like how fentanyl is cheaper than other opioids. Not that opioids were good for us in the first place. Still, the parallel is spooky, because, in both cases, the Americans with the fewest resources most often end up hooked on both the bad drugs and the bad food, or rather bad edibles, as a lot of food really isn't food at all, but simply edible. No reference to those edibles intended. My rating. My thoughts. Page 71 of 292. Luau from Hell. His grandmother has the same name as my great-grandmother. And I wonder if her name is Mary, too. Anyway, this book is good, despite the tangents. I have the audiobook playing along. And I think this could be a movie. Although he hasn't used his TV voice yet. He's very animated. Oh. And that octopus story totally made me think of Remarkably Bright Creatures. I loved the Yes, Chef rant, but it's too long to cite here. 127 Fundamental. I have one of these chocolate stories from the 80s when I was 4. But I learned what it was right away. 159 A Les Cuisine. I thought I'd be done. But I've been busy. And I doubled back on a few of these stories because they were hilarious. There are so many hilarious moments in this memoir that I appreciate Alton sharing with us. I am going to be thinking about that chicken and hamster story for a long time. I had to call a relative after that story. Recommend to others. Yes. This is one of the few memoirs I would be happy to reread.